Hello. Welcome to the Empowered Artist Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Apple, a multi-hyphenate actor, educator, acting coach, writer, dog mom, and founder of this vibrant community that champions artists as they carve out their own unique paths in this wild industry. Whether you're just starting out, in the thick of it, or seeking a bit of artistic fuel to expand your toolbox, you're in the right place. In this space, we'll have honest conversations, share actionable strategies, tips, and resources, and delve into the messy yet beautiful journey of living a sustainable, creative life. We unmask the reality of life as an artist, from navigating career highs and lows to nurturing your full human well-being. I chat with women and non-binary guests who share their personal stories, helpful learnings, and hearts to help you unlock your artistic potential, expand your knowledge, and show up fully and fearlessly in your artistry and daily life. Before we dive into this week's conversation, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. If today's chat resonates with you, please leave us a review. It helps us reach even more incredible artists just like you. And hey, feel free to spread the love. Share this podcast with a friend or post it on your socials, making sure to tag at Empowered Artist Collective and at @JenniferApple_ so we can chat with you there. All right, grab a cup of something cozy, settle in, and let's get to it. How can one lead a theater artistically, logistically, sustainably, all with deep humanity? In this episode of our Artistic Director mini-series, I chat with Maria Manuela Goyanes, current Artistic Director of the Woolly Mammoth Theatre and incoming Artistic Director of LCT3 at Lincoln Center, for an honest conversation about what it takes to run a cultural institution with integrity. Maria offers wisdom on assessing risk in today's theater ecology, why comedy and community are essential tentpoles for new audiences, and how she reframes leadership as a form of abundance, not scarcity. Together, we discuss how to build meaningful community engagement, reimagine institutional best practices, develop sustainable career pipelines, and say yes to bold, risky theater that centers innovation and joy. This episode reminds us that there is no one model of leadership and that the most revolutionary thing you can do is bring your full human self to the table. Enjoy. Maria Manuela Goyanes, welcome to the space.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So grateful you're here. For anybody who does not know you, who are you today?
Oh, Lord.
Sometimes it stumps us. It's like a big one, I know.
It's the today, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, I am currently the Artistic Director of Woolly Mammoth Theatre Company here in Washington, D.C. That's where I am right now, in my office. And I am also the incoming Artistic Director of LCT3 and producer of Lincoln Center Theater. I'll start that in September. I'm also the primary caregiver for my parents who are in Jamaica, Queens. That's where I'm from. So it's a great universe kismet moment for me to be going back to New York, to be able to have not just time to be with them and help them through, but also to work at a great theater like Lincoln Center too. Although it is somewhat bittersweet because I love Woolly Mammoth and there's still a lot to do in Washington, D.C. at this moment in time. Let me just tell you.
Yeah, I can imagine that has been a interesting, maybe is the word, an interesting navigation.
Sure.
Maybe that's the PC word to use in this current juncture in time.
Sure.
Yeah. You have had such an incredible breadth of a career that has touched through some of, I'd say, like the largest and well-known institutions in our theatrical community. Do you mind doubling back a little bit and sharing your artistic origin story, as I guess we'd like to call it?
Happy to. I grew up in Jamaica, Queens. My dad was a mechanic for the MTA. He fixed the buses for 35 years. And my mom was a kindergarten teacher at PS 182, at PS 117, those places in Queens. They met at a church dance in Jackson Heights, Queens. My dad is from Spain and my mom's from the Dominican Republic. It's one of the reasons why I say I'm a caregiver, because most of my family is still in Spain and in the Dominican Republic. I have some family scattered around here, but really, anyway. So
I appreciate you naming that, though, because I think, it's something that so many of us, either currently or eventually will probably in some way or other fall into that category of caregiving for either folks, relatives, siblings, partners. And, you know, the responsibility and frankly, emotional responsibility, even beyond just the physical necessities involved with that, is something that I think so many of us don't name just because it doesn't, there isn't like an official job title or a pay rate that goes with it. And yet it's arguably like one of the most thankless, unforgiving, and demanding jobs anyone could ever have, while obviously continuing to do other real jobs. So thank you for like calling that into the space too.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I feel very lucky that I have a good relationship with my folks. A lot of people don't, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so, it feels like a duty that I've got to, you know, that was always sort of in the cards in some ways, because again, just how I grew up, being the first generation here in the United States with me and my sister. And my sister's on the West Coast, although she comes in as much as she can, to help, as well. So I consider us both, you know, primary caregivers. In that way we make decisions together and things like that. And I feel lucky that I don't have kids, because now my parents are essentially that. Although I have a lot of young people in my life, and feel lucky for that as well. But, you know, for me, the theater sort of happened. I went to Bronx High School of Science, and I was a real bookworm, and it was in an English class that actually our teacher, Miss Blattner, brought us to Manhattan Theater Club to go see a show. That was my first professional play was Blue Window by Craig Lucas. And I just was like, wow, this is amazing. Allison Janney was in it. It was like, oh my gosh. And I just felt, you know, that sort of weird vocational calling and stuff. I'm an older sister. I like to tell people what to do. So the thought of being in the theater and being able to be a director or do something like that,
I relate.
Really exciting. And then, you know, they brought us also to the Roundabout. And so I just sort of got involved in some of the education department activities there and did some workshops and forced my parents to come with me to do them. And, you know, as a young person, you know, really made sure that I could usher cabaret with Alan Cumming and Natasha Richardson like as many times as I possibly could. This is the Rob Marshall production. I loved it. I loved it so much. And so when I went to Brown, and I thought that I would study English or do something like that. And I got pretty quickly into the student theater there. One of them is, you know, the one that's student run. It's called Production Workshop. It's still there. It's really fantastic. And the people who I met there, and the people, you know, so many of the people who were connected to Production Workshop are making a living in the theater still to this day. It's like so thrilling. So I feel like I got to theater late, because when I got there were so many people who had been doing theater in high school and doing theater. And I really got into it really towards my junior and senior year of high school, and wasn't really ever in like a major productions or any of that kind of stuff. And really sort of got involved in it way more in college. But I still didn't think I was going to like actually major in it. I think that's one of the reasons why I feel like the constellation of stars that sort of created my life and my, you know, is just, there's an alternate universe where I went to like Baruch, you know, and stayed in Queens, and like got a master's in business, and like worked at a bank, and like had a bunch of kids, and you know what I mean? Yeah. And I see that universe. I like very, very clearly see that universe. And and so it just also feels like, wow, look at what I've been able to do. Look at what I've been able to be able to, be around and help in whatever way I can make happen. So I got an internship at Trinity Rep when I graduated, and that's where I met Oscar Eustis. I actually had met him the year before because he had taught a dramaturgy class, and he gave me my first professional job at Trinity Rep. Amazing. Which was insane. I was like 22. They paid me something like, I don't know, $18,000 a year or 22. This is 2002. This is
arguably like it hasn't even grown that much. So it's just like,
it's so like, crazy, right? So yeah, exactly. So, but gave me a highfalutin title.
Wow. Okay.
So I was suddenly the associate producer at Trinity Repertory Company in Providence, Rhode Island, which is a major regional theater.
Yeah.
But, I don't drive. I'm from Jamaica, Queens. I still don't really want to drive. And so I left and I was like, Mom, I'm going to live in your basement. Mom and Dad, I'm going to live in your basement. And if it doesn't work in a year, I'll get the real job,
Yeah. Every kid's had this conversation.
It's really lucky to be able to do that, even Jamaica, Queens is not, it's not that far from Manhattan. It's not, you can actually, do stuff. And that was the year that 13P started. I, did stuff at the O'Neill. I did stuff at Williamstown. I just got to meet a whole bunch of people. And it was almost a year to the day. Weirdly, this is how the universe works, that George Wolfe hired me at the Public.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy towns. And I was just like, this is where I want to be. I had heard of the Public. I had really, really wanted to work there just because of the lore and the ideas, and also just like the gift to New York City. I really feel like very connected to cities, period. Just like, I feel like I grew up there. I grew up with 13P and I grew up at the Public. Spent 14 and a half years there.
Wow.
And then realized that like, maybe I could run something. I didn't really actually think that I wanted to just go, I didn't put my hat in the ring for a lot of things because I love the Public and I love what it stands for. And I felt like I could still do more things. But when Woolly Mammoth came up and the headhunter called Greg Candell, who may you rest in peace, he really loved Woolly and really was just a wonderful human, to me at least. And like, I thought, wow, this is a theater with a risk profile that is so exciting to me. And in the middle of Washington, D.C., and at the time it was the first Trump administration. Yeah. So I was like, let's do this. Let's do this. And so that's how I got here.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. Anybody who's listened to this podcast for a while, knows I love to hear these stories just to continue naming how there is no one right way to do this, nor is there singly one way to do this, and certainly within this mini series to really hear how all these folks have gotten to the same title of a position with all sorts of backgrounds. And obviously there's maybe an ethos overlap or a vision overlap or a work ethic overlap, but those are just more qualities about a human rather than the job. And so I love hearing how it all came to be. I'm curious though for you why it went on the I'd say I'm going to call it leadership side of it rather than the in the the weeds of the doing. So the actor, the sound, the lights, why for you was that the calling?
Well, so when I was at Brown, I directed the senior slot and I was, I acted some. I was I like to say I was typecasted as Kate in Taming of the Shrew. And then I was no more. It was an easy role for me. But I really loved directing the thinking about things in that way. And I still think about things like that visually and movement and, what the overall story is, the thinking is. But there came a point when I was at Trinity Rep, there was a moment when actually I had this flirtation about going to Washington, D.C. then, which is funny. I had gotten into the Alan Lee Hughes Fellowship Program at Arena Stage under Molly Smith. And I had, and it was for a director, dramaturg fellowship kind of thing. But then I also had this offer to be the associate producer at Trinity Rep. And I was like, should I take the bird in hand here or go? I mean, it was also another kind of bird in hand, a different kind of bird. Basically what I thought of was this. I was like, okay, if I continue to direct and do this in DC and go, say, to grad school or something like that. Yeah. I will need to live out of a suitcase for a while. I will have to take any gig that comes to me because it's important, regardless of if I like the play or not. And I wasn't one of those people. And I really, really admired these people who could read a play as a director and personalize it right away. and find their way into it and find their way to why it is that they needed to do this project and what they could bring to it. I was like, I don't really want to see my production of Moon for the Misbegotten. Like somebody else should do that. It's a gorgeous play, but it's not the thing that I have to do. There were plays that I felt like I really wanted to do. I worked on a play by Sylvan Oswald called Plutonics. I worked on Kid Simple by Jordan Harrison. When they were in the graduate program at Brown, I got to work on Strange Loop when I was a kid, like 24, 25, And I remember having a moment again when I was working on Strange Loop of like, I love this. And the kind of focus that I am having is more sort of the bigger picture focus, and bigger, and the kind of obsession that an artist has to have over the thing that they're working on right at this moment is a kind of patience and tenacity and obsession that I started to have for the whole.
Wow.
I can imagine that there will be a moment in my life where I feel like I want to focus in again, but I don't. Everybody kept saying like, oh, most of the people who are in admin or whatever are frustrated actors or frustrated directors or people who didn't get to, I just never felt that way. I just haven't felt that way. Frankly, I was like, kind of sometimes, like, I was like, this is going to sound so bad.
No, do it.
Like, I would direct a reading and I was like bored. Like, I'm bored because I'm not working on like the marketing into this and this. And
yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I was like, I think it was more like ADHD coming out. You know what I
No,
mean?
but I think this is, I think it's a knowing of oneself. Like it really is. And I think so many of us maybe judge ourselves for not wanting to do something that maybe we've been told is the way or like is the thing you're supposed to be doing. Or that you exactly.
And then it changed.
Correct. And you're allowed to change and you're allowed to adjust and you're allowed to also like reassess what speaks to you. And I think how beautiful for yourself to know yourself well enough to be like, actually, like this is speaking to me and let me listen to myself. Let me follow what actually feels good as opposed to like trudging through this thing, like a sink cost of it all of like, or whatever it is. Like, I think it's so wonderful that you're like, no,
like maybe an immigrant mentality or something like that too. It's like, I sort of felt like I was like, okay, so I'm going to be running around trying to get job after job after job and have a hard time figuring out security versus like, let me just actually have like a steady paycheck and try and make work. I mean, for most of my time at the Public, I was doing 13p at night and doing the Public during the day. Right. So like, I was able to say, well, I'm going to get my paycheck doing this and then I'm going to pour a lot of heart and soul into this other thing. Yeah. Not going to get paid or not going to pay that much or, you know what I mean? Yeah. And be able to make a lot of things happen that way and get to be involved in it. So I wanted more control and I don't feel like artists have that much. As an actor, you really have to wait, until you get your own production company, until you can put stuff together, even directors, you just sort of have to sort of chase the thing until you get to a point where you can actually decide or say no to things. It just takes a while. And that's not to say that it has anything to do with talent. It just is trust, trust of like artist to artist, people knowing each other, knowing their work, knowing that it's going to be the right person in the room. There's so many things that go into every decision about who should be in the room together.
I know. I love that you named that. So thank you. Hi, actor friends. Talking to you. If finding the perfect monologue has you feeling stuck, I've got just the thing. I've put together a free monologue selection toolkit just for you. It's packed with resources, free and paid options, plus tips for choosing, editing, and customizing pieces to showcase you. Head over to jenniferapple.net/freebie and stop avoiding the auditions that ask for a monologue or waiting for the perfect piece to simply fall into your lap. Dive into this free toolkit that I set up just for you that'll set you up to feel agency over your process and artistry. That's jenniferapple.net/freebie and get started on finding your next go-to monologue. And so with your quote unquote more stable job choice, let's move to Woolly Mammoth. Yeah. How was it to finally fully like lead, not, be in conjunction with the leadership and obviously like in that making decisions, but like it's happening under your leadership. How was that adjustment for you?
Yeah. So I followed a really wonderful human being, Howard Schawitz. And I thought to myself, one of the main reasons why I said yes to Woolly was because I was following Howard Schawitz, because he is a mensch. And I could call him up and talk to him and be in community with him. If somebody called him and was like, "What's Maria doing?" He'd call me. He wouldn't be like, "Yeah, I don't know." You know?
Yeah.
He just is a mensch. And I thought, this is the person who I want to follow and learn how to be in this position with.
Yeah.
And so I felt really, it was hard. Okay. Like the beginning, and it still is. It always is hard because you have people's livelihoods on your shoulders in a different kind of way, right? Ultimately, it's hard to sleep at night if you're not selling tickets or not making your income goals for contributed revenue. It becomes difficult because I don't want to let people down, and their livelihood means something to me. And I want people to stay in the theater, and like those decisions, the decisions that, I make on the stage for the stage or for whatever really have a direct impact a lot of the time. So I feel like, there's a lot of things that I feel like I got wrong, that I would do differently. And I also look back and I think like it's also felt like one of the most exciting challenges ever. I'm the kind of person who, when I see my full calendar and it's like back-to-back meetings, I'm like, look at who I'm getting to meet. Look at what I'm getting to do. This is so exciting. Oh my God. This morning I did this. In the evening I did this. Oh my God. I'm not oppressed by that kind of workload. I don't feel oppressed by the kind of like time, like, oh my God, I don't have time. I'm more of a work-life integrator than a compartmentalizer. No knock on anybody who needs to be a compartmentalizer, wants to be a compartmentalizer. But for me, it's the way, because it feels more vocational to me, I do feel like I want to be able to, in the middle of the day, go to a museum with a donor and hang out with them and like, go to a happy hour with an artist or whatever and have this sort of like life kind of flow kind of thing with with the work that I do. Sometimes it gets unhealthy for sure. And I've sort of been learning that, but I think that we talk about coming to Woolly. I think that was one of the biggest things was, how am I spending my time and how is it most effective? And I don't know that I did. I feel like I did a lot of things that were not that effective or met with a lot of people who didn't ultimately, come through and have gotten better at like, well, yes, I'm going to go to the museum, but I'm not going to spend an hour and a half doing it with you. Maybe it's going to be more like a half an hour. And then with this other person, it'll be something else. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you just get better at those things. So I just really felt like I was just, it felt like more about just trying to get the fullest lay of the land as quickly as I possibly could. And again, that was exciting, but I feel like, there's probably more strategy that I probably could have used at that time.
Part of me is like, maybe you're right. And the other part of me is like, that's just you being humble. I think everybody can always, quote unquote, improve at everything that we're doing. And frankly, that is the learning curve of doing something for the first time. Like if we just somehow came out of the thing and just knew exactly how to run, I think.
Brene Brown calls it the FFTs, fucking first times. I don't know if you're supposed to.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you can curse as much as you want, 1,000%. I also, when I coach clients, I always talk about it like the first pancake, where it's like when you do your monologue. Yeah. You do the monologue for the first time and like, it's totally fine. It's edible, right? But does it look like the pancake that you envision when you look at a pancake? No.
I'm going to totally use that. That's
totally
very, very
steal
good.
it. Yeah. It's a first pancake, it's still edible, but like you want a round circled pancake at some point. Same vibe. And so I guess you have named it vaguely. Now that you've been in the routine of it, and obviously as you are transitioning to a new institution with it, what are some of the things that you'd say define the way in which you operate an artistic director journey? Like, is it obviously the balancing of the work-life integration, which I love that phrasing,
But in terms of like your responsibilities, at least within Woolly, the way in which the totem pole, operates, like what exactly has that been or is that for you?
I really appreciate this question. I feel like I could talk to you about it for hours and hours.
Great. Let's do it.
We will in the future or here right now.
Yeah.
It's been really up and down because my first season, the pandemic happened. So I feel like I had a false sort of start and then had to sort of like figure out how to, with Emeka Abe at the time, who was the managing director, who did great, like work on this too. And like with the different staff, like trying to actually sort of move through that and sort of deal with a kind of recovery from that pandemic now 5 years on that is just really lagging, at least for Woolly, even amidst getting the Tony Award in 2022, like even amidst high highs, Yeah. And I think part of that has to do with how do you assess risk?
Okay.
And I think I assessed risk differently and assess risk differently now than I did before.
What would you say was the prior and the current?
Yeah, I still feel this way, where I actually think that coming out of the pandemic, I was too risky.
How?
Yeah, weird. I don't feel that. I didn't feel that way at the time. I feel like we had really clear partnerships and collaborations and ideas about how to bring more people to the table and other things. And I think that, when I got to Woolly, I really had a hard time talking about it like a regional theater because I didn't think of it that way. I thought of it as like an incubator for the country. I thought of it as like, a place that you can do R&D and think about form in different ways. And, the idea that we would do things that nobody else would do, right? That you would get to see something here. Strange Loop ended up being that, right? Like other people weren't doing it. So I was like, I guess we have to do it, after the Playwrights Horizons P73 production, So just basically having a space or having, the ability to be like, okay, well, if it's not going to go mainstream, we'll do it, And now I feel like, and when I say it was too risky or I was too risky, now I feel like I do think of Woolly more like a regional theater. And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But it's a different thing, which means that it needs more tentpoles that are projects that will be revenue generating, because nothing makes money. But when I say revenue generating, I mean so when I say nothing makes money, what I mean is it's very hard for us to, in a 250 seat house, to see some kind of profit after expenses in any way, shape, or form when you're really looking at expenses. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
When you put my time and other people's time in. Maybe direct expenses we can get there, but it's not easy. Especially if you're doing new plays, untested plays that people haven't heard of, right?
Yeah.
I remember hearing Oscar talk about tentpoles and other folks talk about tentpoles. What are the tentpoles of the season? And I remember really bucking against that and being like, what do you mean a tentpole? At Woolly Mammoth, no one's going to know the plays. Nobody is going to know the playwright. Usually, it's trying to try something new. And again, now I feel like it's so much harder to get people to come to a downtown in a city, period, right now, right? The downtowns of cities have really emptied out. There's still a ton of empty space here. Here in Washington, the last statistic I heard was 113,000 people, federal workers, just lost their jobs.
Yeah.
That was our audience, right? I don't know what's going to happen with the funding. DC's not a state. So our quote unquote state funding is from the federal government.
Yep.
So what is that going to mean? So my assessing risk is different now. And so I am thinking about tentpoles, or I am thinking about quote unquote revenue generating projects that get closer to actually helping to pay for themselves and or pay for other things. And that's it's just simply not how I thought about it before in the same way.
Do you have feelings about that shift for you personally? May I ask those?
Of course I do. Yeah, of course. Well, what's interesting to me about it is because I come from New York, you know, the kind of experimental theater that Woolly has done or traditionally has done is not, to me, even close to the kind of experimental theater that I saw at like Collapsible Giraffe, National Theater of the United States of America, the Worcester Group, like Elevator Repair Service. Like, even though Elevator Repair Service has done a show at Woolly and like it was a great show, Arguendo, that was like every once in a while playing with form. And I think that was one of the things that I really wanted to do was play with form here too. It's not just about the plays that are with the meaty subjects that nobody's talking about, but told linearly. It's also about how we think about, you know, the structure of the play and how somebody comes to that structure and the form playing, you know, helping people understand something about themselves also. And what I realized is that form is very hard to deal with. It's considered very experimental to not have basically a play that looks like other plays. It really is. And that's nuts to me. And so that's the part that makes me annoyed. It really makes me very frustrated because I go, this is the beauty of the theater. If you want something to look like Netflix or look like HBO or look like whatever, you know, you can see those things elsewhere.
Correct.
The beauty of the theater is you can play with time and space.
Or I hate the word should, but like we should be able to do that is probably the.
But I think that we're a country that is so driven by Hollywood and the, you know, and all of these things that's our milieu, right? So we're watching these things and we're watching how they end. Even the most exciting TV shows, even the most exciting movies, that kind of stuff that are mainstream still tend to have either they just are Aristotelian. They have a specific sort of like going forward, going backward, doing, you know, but they don't really play with form in the same kind of way. Black Mirror does, I guess, a bit. Did
you watch Adolescence also?
Not yet. I cannot wait.
I could do a whole podcast series just about my feelings of that. I mean, it's linear in that like we're moving forward, but just simply the fact that it's like one take per episode is like that is shifting form in a way that it's like, why have we not done this as an artistic feat?
Well, I remember when they did it at Birdman. I remember they did it that movie.
Yeah, there was like 10 minutes to try like an hour of this stuff. And like we're talking about like some of these, it's theater on screen. It's really the swap of what we have. It's like you are having rehearsal and the crew is moving like a dance around these actors and vice versa. And we're playing together and there's clearly a necessary collaboration. For me, it's like, oh, right. This is the reminder of like what's possible. But I mean, this is a tangent, but it's just, it's reiterating that form.
It's exactly what I've been. So when I say I took too many risks, I think that's part of it, you know, played with form a little bit too much. In my mind, I was thinking about aesthetic innovation and moving those conversations forward for like, you know, I was always so proud when somebody said, Woolly Mammoth's a theater person's theater. And then I was like, yes, so we should make everybody be a theater person, right? But what I'm thinking about and dealing with is the fact that everybody isn't a theater person. So how do you actually bring them in to begin with? And sometimes form is not the way. Playing with form is not the way to do that.
What would you say then are these tent poles that now, at least in the back of your mind, or as you're going to be transitioning to Lincoln Center, like these are things that you're now like, okay, my tent probably needs these, or I need to be more cognizant of these tent poles?
Yeah, Lincoln Center is super different though. So Lincoln Center is like not the same. I mean, yeah, it's talk about a massive platform, right? It's like, you know, you can go places all over the world and people know what Lincoln Center is. Let me tell you, they don't know what Woolly Mammoth is, except for an extinct animal. But like, you know, Lincoln Center is a very different kind of platform.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so in the tentpoles in terms of Woolly, you're thinking about tentpoles for Woolly. I think like comedy has always been very, very key. And I have wanted to create more space for folks who are in the comedy world to actually move and be more fluid in the theater world. So I think next season we're going to do something like that. I think part of what I think of a tent pole is that there are like many concentric circles of audiences that can be connected to it, right? And would want to come. And when I mean audiences, I don't mean as much like we're bringing the African-American audience to the African-American play.
No, yeah.
I don't mean that. I mean, like, although cultural connections certainly are real for sure. But what I mean is like, you know, comedy has people who go see comedy,
right?
Literally. And there's an overlap with people who go see theater, but there are a bunch of people who go see comedy who don't go to the theater, right?
So and vice versa, theatrical folks maybe not necessarily going to see, comedians or
musical theater is like this too. I mean, you know, there's a bunch of people who go to musical theater who don't go to see straight plays, and don't know anything really about straight plays. There's like another concentric circle. So when I say tempo, my definition is that there are circles of audience members, and the way that you know, a lot of other theaters in New York and elsewhere do it. They do it based on casting, right? They go, Lupita Nyong'o is an amazing actor and has her own fan base. That's a circle of audience that's going to come see this play, in addition to whatever the play's about, in addition to if it's a musical or a play or a Shakespeare or whatever, in addition to, right?
Yeah.
And for me, you know, I've always been of the mind of like, you know, if you talk about the play, if you read the play ahead of time, if you have a good conversation about it, chances are you're going to get something out of it. Like I love the fact that not everybody likes Woolly Mammoth's plays, because we all talk about them and we go, yeah, one of them was fucking great. I loved it. Then two of them, I saw the world in a different way. And three, like these other two, I freaking, you know, my friend liked them, but I was like, what the hell? Yeah. What are we doing? You know?
Yeah.
And I think for me, like, how do we keep doing that how do we keep that kind of spirit of, it's not a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
It's a conversation.
Yes, it's a conversation. And that you go, well, what was the artist wanting? What was the artist thinking about? What was the, you know, and I feel like, you know, other mediums get a lot more benefit of the doubt in this regard, but in the theater, you don't. In the theater, you're like, people are like, you wasted my 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I was like, how many movies have you seen that are shitty?
Yeah. Or how many hours of reality TV show have I sat through? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, give me a freaking break. Like, come on, you know?
Yeah.
You can't get your 13 hours back from watching that TV show that actually was like, you know?
Horrifying. Yep. That was me.
Yeah. So that's the thing that I feel like when I say I want to try and make everybody a theater person, I'm like, there is a way to do this. And it is high touch. It means a lot of more presence and time. It means a lot more conversations with different people. People have to be willing to have the conversation and get to meet each other and talk to each other about it. It's one of the things I've been thinking about with season planning for next year is like, you know, we do a lot of community conversations, talkbacks, lobby experiences, those kinds of things. And I've just been talking to our associate artistic director, Kristen Jackson. And I was like, maybe instead of all these like, you know, events that we have over the course of the year, we should actually just get one group, one person to help us do conversations after every show. Why not? See what happens. And that's the thing that I feel like at Woolly we can do. We can experiment in this way, pilot some stuff, do these, you know, different kinds of ideas. And there's a lot of appetite for that at a place like Woolly, lots of excitement around that. And there still has to be some stability.
1,000%.
And so that's where the tentpoles, like Second City is a great tentpole, right? They have like a group of people who love Second City and know Second City, you know, and will come to Woolly because they're like theater. But then there's a whole group of people who've never been to Woolly who love Second City, you know?
Yeah.
So at Lincoln Center is different. Lincoln Center is not, you know, I haven't started there yet. And I'm excited. I know that Lear's vision of the theater is as expansive as my vision and my hopes for the theater. And I am I love the fact that Roberta Pereira is at the library. I love the fact that Shanta Thake, who I know from Joe's Pub, is at Link Inc., Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. I think there's just a lot of possibility, and a lot of dreaming that can happen. And and it's a different kind of platform, right? Yeah. And so the kind of risk of like, let's just throw all this money into this idea and let's pilot it and that kind of stuff or whatever might look different. Mm-hmm. I think I'll be able to do a bunch of cool things for sure. And I'm still looking at the ecology of New York City and hoping that I can do everything possible to make sure that those more experimental places and more, Woolly-like places in New York, in my mind, like the Flea and Soho Rep and Ars Nova and all these still get to do amazing, amazing work. And can I help support that in some ways? And then so that like Lincoln Center then can provide a platform for artists that is more further along in their careers and actually help them to, in my mind, you sort of, how do you take advantage of a place like Lincoln Center, right? If you're doing your first show there ever, it's hard to figure out how to do that.
Right.
Because, you do a show, that's amazing. You get a show at Lincoln Center, it runs for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and then what? And then what?
Mm-hmm.
Then what?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, like a place like Lincoln Center is, the then what should be, let's tour it. Let's see when the next show that you write will be in the Mitzi, or are you a Broadway Brown person maybe one day? Like, can we try and see if that's a possibility? And that's really exciting to me because, I think that, it means there's so much that can be open to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you've just written your first, second, third play, and this is the first time you're getting a real professional production ever, chances aren't like you could be a wonderkind. There are a lot of wonderkind playwrights who I think are amazing, right? But the chances are high that, it's going to take some time for you to be considered to write a Broadway show.
Yeah. I love that you're thinking about these opportunities as a long haul and not just like the moment in time, because the moment in time is very real and it's an incredible opportunity and it's a showcase of sorts to be able to see your work, have it, shared with other folks in, like the 4 to whatever weeks that we're doing it. But I love that you're envisioning it beyond, because arguably, when I think about some of the theaters that I've worked at, or the directors who, have directed me, or the workshops that I've workshopped and that have moved along, these are all relationships that you've built. And then there's something really beautiful about remembering that art is alive and breathing. And yes, you may have this one production that shows this particular art in this particular moment, but to have somebody who really pictures you and it in the future iterations with your growth, with its growth, I think is it's arguably like why I became a performer and an artist, is because you want to be a part of the thing that continues to breathe. And it doesn't just have this moment in time and then you say goodbye forever. And so I love that you're envisioning that for this massively gorgeous, incredible, monumental institution, that, I'm
really excited about that.
Yeah.
And I think I really do deeply care about it. You can tell by the work that I've done at Woolly, I care about people having careers and, full lives in the theater if possible, right? If at all possible. And so I've spent a lot of time working on touring shows at Woolly. I've spent a lot of time thinking about and trying to set up co-productions or the next production or the next other thing, or helping other, it's those kinds of things that I feel like, are not just about, getting to live on with a show, or a show, that you work on, say, for 7 years isn't over after 4 weweeks, but also allows like artists to keep having health insurance and keep having like stuff like that. That is like, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a much bigger conversation.
That's the stuff that I feel like is really, really important. It's really important. And I feel like that to me feels like a big responsibility. I mean, when we talk about being an artistic director, that's like, when I talk about livelihood, it's not just the livelihood of the people who get to have a paycheck every week,
Yeah.
but it's also of the folks who are working with us, the artists and stuff. And how do we help them take this opportunity and sort of make as much out of it as possible?
Have you been using the same monologue for years? Are you gearing up to apply for BA, BFA, or MFA programs and need pieces for that process? Or maybe you just have no idea where to even start with monologue hunting? I get it, and that's why I offer monologue sourcing. This is a unique process where I find monologues chosen specifically for you. So many artists pick pieces based on external labels like type or for roles rather than finding material that represents who they truly are. So here's how it works. We'll meet virtually and you'll share all about who you are, your passions, values, beliefs, and everything in between. Don't worry, I will help guide you through this process. Then I'll get to work finding monologues that fit you like a glove. With years of experience sourcing pieces for hundreds of artists, I've seen the difference it makes to have a monologue that genuinely feels like you. So, if you want to feel empowered about the monologues you bring into rooms and use for auditions, I would love to help you find them. And because you're a listener of the Empowered Artist Collective podcast, I'm offering an exclusive rate. Head to empoweredartistcollective.com/podcast promo to register and claim the special offer. That's empoweredartistcollective.com/podcast promo. I cannot wait to help you find monologues you absolutely adore.
I know this is kind of like an introspective question, but if you were to describe yourself as an artistic director and the way in which you lead, what would be some of your defining qualities that you would say to define yourself?
I like humor. I like to not take everything so seriously.
Yeah.
Although I'm quite a serious person.
I think there's a misnomer around like being a serious person being negative. I just want to name this because I also consider myself somebody who's maybe the word I've received is like intense. But for me, what that just means, yeah.
Welcome to my world.
Right. I'm a native New Yorker also. Like I think that's just like in the zeitgeist. But you know, like that word, like intense having, maybe it's just because I'm also a woman, but like having some sort of negative association where really what that means for me is that I'm focused. I'm really intentional around the way in which I relate to people and I communicate, and that I'm driven and there's a passion and like, so the seriousness, I hear
and
you.
You get shit done that other people can't.
I would hope so. But, but you know, the seriousness, I think for me, when I think serious, I think of somebody who is thoughtful and deep and also intentional and has like a misnomer around the label that like feels more like negative coded. I guess I just want to offer that for me, having this conversation feels like it's serious. It's antithetical to me to like the humor part. Like it's there, I'm sure. But I want to just be like, let's lift it.
I mean, I think that like one of the things that is just so difficult to me in these organizations is like we're all pretending. It feels like we're often pretending to be or like businesses, especially in New York, because it's Wall Street is the big currency there, right? But here it's the government, right, in DC, and it's like we're sort of like, what are best practices for the theater? Well, let's look to the businesses and what their best practices are, because most of the people who are on our board are connected to a big business or real estate or whatever it is and that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, why are they the best practices for a theater?
Yeah,
a theater. Like, can we remember we're making plays? Like, you know, like it's like that kind of stuff. I'm just like, you know, and most of the people who work in a theater have actually been in a play.
1,000%.
So they like know the warm-ups, they know the this, they know the that. And I think like trying to bring that ethos, that joy of it is feels really important to me. And and so I really want to not just enjoy myself when I go to work, but I want other people to enjoy themselves.
Yeah. I also interrupted your list, so carry on.
No, please, I just had those thoughts. Okay. I mean, I try to practice like sort of thinking abundantly, which I think manifests itself in terms of being an artistic director that, you know, I want the staff to, if they are artists, to go do their art. If they are, if they have something else that they want to try and do that they feel like is going to like enhance their, you know, personal development or that kind of stuff or whatever, I want them to do that. I'm not like, you know, you can only do one thing outside of Woolly, I mean, I ran 13P while being at the public, right? Yeah. It's like, I want them to come and use Woolly and help and have more art happen, right? And more different things happen, even if it's not just theater, it can be visual arts, it can be whatever, Yeah. I have a couple of pieces from people who I've bought who are staff members, like visual arts. And I was like, I want them to do that. So that I think also characterizes me, because I think I think I'd like to think that my generation of artistic directors all believe that. But I definitely didn't feel that coming up. Yeah. That it was okay it sort of felt like you had to be quiet about all the other things that you're doing because you had an exclusivity clause or something like that with the place that you're, and that was just so much about competition. And I just am not, The third thing I would say is I am a more the merrier kind of person. I am. And so I don't feel threatened by the thought of having 5 artistic directors in a room needing to give notes. I will want to make sure that the playwright or the director aren't going to be overwhelmed. But I remember so one of the shows that we did in the pandemic was This Is Who I Am. And it was one of the first Zooms that across the country, basically, that was happening. It was in the fall we commissioned it for Zoom, and we did it in the fall of 2020. And it was the Guthrie. It was Joe Hodge at the Guthrie. It was Diane Paulus at ART. It was Nataki Garrett at OSF. It was me at Woolly Mammoth and Kate Lowald at the Play Company. We all got together and said, we're going to have this Zoom happen in each of our cities. Wow. And it was a commission, right? So the play was being made, and Everett Ojkin directed it, did a beautiful job. It was by Amir Nizar Zawabi. And I just remember talking to all the artistic directors and being like, okay, I bet they're going to be overwhelmed by all the notes from all of us. So can we all just talk about it and decide this person's going to give them and this, you know what I mean? Yeah. These things don't seem hard to me, even though for some reason it seems like it doesn't happen as much. I think it's been happening more since the pandemic, for sure, more in my generation of artistic directors, for sure. Yeah. But those are just 3 or 4 things that are really guiding principles for me,
No, it's beautiful to hear, because again, we are not a monolith. And I just want to, remind people that people are human and that arguably
I don't need to be the end all be all if somebody else has a better idea.
Yeah.
But I do feel like sometimes people in positions of power really feel like they have to be. And, to each his own. That's not my gig. That's not my style.
Yeah. In this moment of transition for you, are there some things that you are keeping in mind?
I really want to make sure that I leave Woolly Mammoth in a great place for the next artistic director. There's going to be a national search. They'll hopefully choose a search firm. And that's how they got me. That's I hope that a lot of amazing artists and people will want to come and want to run this incredible theater. And I can't wait to see, and I can't wait to support. And I feel excited that there are some big gifts that have sort of come in that are making at least me feel like, okay, it's not dire here, although financially I don't have a crystal ball, and what's going to happen in DC is really scary. And some theaters who can plan for it are trying to not put in any money from the city or the federal government into the next year's budget, which would be very hard for us to do. Yeah. And so it's just, so even with those gifts that are sort of making me feel like, oh, phew, I still feel really like the precarious nature of this moment and this administration in Washington, D.C. Also, how different it is for D.C. theaters than it is for the rest of the country. That's not to say that the rest of the country isn't feeling it. Yeah, they absolutely are. It's a yes and conversation where you just, it's different to not be a state and have your own.
Yeah. And the proximity of it too, just being literally your backyard is a very different thing than on a TV screen.
10 blocks from here.
Exactly.
Literally. Mm-hmm. So that's the White House and the Capitol. So I'm thinking a lot about how to show up for my folks and what are the things that I need to do to like set them up so that I actually can still, move, start this new job and have a life.
Yeah.
And so that my life isn't just going to work and going to help my folks and going to work and help, So I'm thinking a lot about that. I love the theater. So I'm thinking a lot about like all of the plays and all of the things that I want to see. I have intense FOMO. And so I'm going to have intense FOMO not being in Washington, D.C., seeing all this stuff and people being like, oh, you missed that and you missed that. It's going to be real. And just like the grief that comes up. I mean, when you leave a job, 7 years is no small amount of time.
Yeah.
It's not a massive amount of time. It's not like my 14 and a half years at the public, but like it's time. It's long enough to have relationships with people that I'm going to miss seeing often.
Yeah.
Just like I missed folks in New York when I came here.
Yeah. And for anybody who is listening and is thinking to themselves, this is something that I am thinking might be my calling, but I've come through these different paths, or, I haven't really, had much exposure to what it could mean to be, an artistic director. Like, what would be your starter kit for folks who are wanting to go down the artistic directing path and or thinking to themselves, this search should be interesting for me? What would be your thoughts?
Well, there's sort of two things that I would say. The first is, I don't know, man, being an artistic director, go ahead and put up your own plays with your friends and with people, getting people butts in seats, figuring out how to pay people, figuring out how to do all this stuff that I learned in that student theater at Brown. It's just a lot more zeros, a lot, you know what I mean? The stakes are different, but it's still, very much like doing things that you believe in and then trying to get other people to believe in them, care about them and want to come. Yeah. And I think to me, like, there's not a school for being an artistic director because everybody comes at how to make things like that in their own way.
Right.
So you have to find the way you do that. Mm-hmm. It took me a long time to sort of realize that there wasn't one way or one right way that I was trying to learn. Mm-hmm. And that Oscar's way is not my way. My way is not Howard's way. Mm-hmm. There's overlap, sure. But that the goal of getting to work on something great that you believe in and that and hopefully other people believe in, there are many ways to get to that place.
Yeah.
And so the first things first is like, for me, it was always just start doing it. Mm-hmm. Just start doing it. The whole thing about needing to have a certain amount of training to be able to do X, Y, Z or whatever, to me, the specialization of our industry. Yeah. I believe I'm happy for people who go to grad school and do all that kind of stuff. I'm happy that they do that. That's awesome. It just wasn't my path. Mm-hmm. And for me, I sometimes feel like when folks don't have any kind of real world experience, whatever, they're really at a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. And the folks who end up going to grad school after having some real world experience get a lot out of it. And then they come out and they are able to change in that way. And so that's the thing that I guess I would say is like, that's why my advice is always, Jim Houghton said this to me, just do it. Just like Nike was right. Yeah. But then the second thing is, if this is a job that you think that you'd be interested in, hold your nerve and hold your courage and apply. Go for it. This is a theater company that takes chances. And this is a board that understands that and knows that. Yeah. It's rare in the American theater, that they're not looking for the like safe idea or the safe thing, when I first was being interviewed and I came and I met the search committee, one of the board members, I felt almost like goaded into saying, if something didn't work, I would like blow it up and try something else and just do completely different things. And I was like, this is the craziest board.
I love it.
The craziest in the best ways. Like, oh my God, this is a board that's used to or has been really does understand that to make woolly, you gotta sometimes, when the thing doesn't work,
what are you doing?
Yeah, throw it out. Yeah. Try something new. Explode it. think about it in a different way, pilot something else,
Yeah.
And so I think this is a board that really, is ready and eager to hear from people like that. So go for it,
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing in this way, for opening up your heart, for talking so vulnerably and openly. And I'm so, so, so grateful for you in this space. And I'm really excited for this next chapter of your career and your artistic journey. And I'm grateful that New York is going to welcome you back, hopefully with the most open of arms. What is the grammar? The most open of arms,
Sounds good.
Yeah. For you to, be able to put this gorgeous vision and ethos into practice. I think it's, the more folks that we can continue having here that continue, keeping true to, I think, why the hub of theater started here, and is important. So for anybody who wants to reach out to work with you, to potentially pick your brain or whatever it is, what within your boundaries, is the best way for people to find you?
Yeah. My email's actually on the Woolly website, so you can just email me.
Great. So, I love it.
I can't promise a timely response.
Yeah. No, that I think should be, I mean, again, I hate the shoulds, but like in the times that we're living in, I feel like the grace that we can offer one another for like, our time frames of communication. I'm not saying no communication, but the time frames for communication, that for me feels like,
the fact that everybody expects things like this is just very, very tricky.
Thank you. Where the world is burning, we could take a moment to breathe through things.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I look forward to meeting you in person. I hope we get to hang out in person.
Same.
And getting to know each other and stuff. But I feel very grateful, not just to be in your company, but also in the company of people like Lisa McNulty doing this podcast and, and all of the great other people who you're going to have. Like, is what a gift that you're giving the theater community.
Thank you. I'm trying to highlight the folks who are doing the work and doing so from a place that, is valued. Like, I don't mean like of money. I mean like there is a value in it. Has values. Yeah. Words. Thank you again for
You do great with words. It's all
Thank
good.
you. These affirmations are helpful.
That's it for today's episode. I hope you walk away with some fresh insights, feel inspired, and a little more empowered to take the next step on your artistic journey. Remember, whether it's a small shift or a big breakthrough, every step forward counts. You've got this, and we're here cheering you on every step of the way. If you found today's episode helpful, don't forget to hit subscribe so you'll never miss out on the discussions we have each week. And if something today really resonated with you, please leave us a review. It truly is one of the best ways to help other artists find our podcast and join in on the conversations. Plus, we feel the love too when you do. And don't keep all this goodness to yourself. Share this episode with your people or post about it on social media. Be sure to tag at Empowered Artist Collective and at @JenniferApple_ so we can see what's landing for you and keep the conversation going. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being a part of this incredible community. Keep creating, keep thriving, stay empowered. I'm Jennifer Apple. Until next time.